We're on the lunch break of the questioning of Mark Metcalf, a anti-fascist activist who was targeted by Mark Jenner. We've heard, well, I'm joined by Dave Smith, the Blacklist Support Group. We've heard a lot from...
Hello.
We've heard a lot from Mark Jenner. We've heard a lot about Mark Jenner, but we've mostly heard from Mark Metcalf about the types of political activity he was involved in. What have you made of how he's approached the evidence today?
Yeah, I mean, Mark's using the opportunity to lay out his political history, you know, his years of activism, you know, what he was involved in, trade union work, his anti-racist campaigning, his police accountability stuff, and anti-fascism stuff. And I think he's made it very clear to the public gallery and to the inquiry that, you know, he's very active in a whole range of political campaigns, basically. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's been a lot of questions. Well, there's been some questions which he has given not just fulsome answers to, but like kind of gone on to lots of other things. We've heard a fair bit about his involvement in non-league Sunday football, for example, as asides and so forth.
Having known Mark for many, many years, he's very keen on football.
Yes,
and telephone calls with him do involve a lot of discussions about football matches with Sunderland as well. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked at length about his involvement in the Hackney Community Defence Campaign Association, about his involvement with the Colin Roach Centre, about the connections with anti-fascist action, his own involvement in anti-fascist action, a little bit about his involvement with Red Action. One of the things that came up is something we've seen before about how Mark Jenner within the Colin Roach Centre really pushed a focus towards anti-fascism, became the delegate for the Colin Roach Centre to anti-fascist action. And Mark Metcalf said, that he was always pushing that. He was involved in other things. He was interested in Malcolm Kennedy, which was something I'd forgotten about, actually, but was related to all this, and some other issues, but it was anti-fascism that was his main concern.
Yeah, it seems, a lot of the discussion is really about when Mark Metcalf was at the Colin Roach Centre, because a lot of these organisations and campaigns that you're talking about were sort of coordinated through the Colin Roach Centre, which was a sort of community group, come political campaigning, come trade union resource centre in Hackney in the 1990s. Yeah, I mean, they were seen on lots of different stuff. I mean, anyone who was active in East London at the time would have known the College Road Centre. They weren't sort of, if you didn't know. But I met them a lot on trade unions. For example, the JJ fast foods dispute, a big dispute, predominantly, I think, Turkish workers in dispute there, certainly migrant, Turkish workers. And other picket lines, and we were shown a document. One of the first documents that they showed actually was a pamphlet that was written by Brian Higgins, a blacklisted construction worker, was originally a core participant in this inquiry in his own right, but unfortunately died before being disclosed any of the evidence to him or being able to present his own case. But once again, the pamphlet was published by the Colin Roach Centre that he wrote. Lots. I came across him with trade unionism a lot, but also in anti-fascism. But it does seem, from the evidence that it's Mark Jenner, and also, to be honest, from the evidence from Alison the day, earlier in the week, and from Steve Headley yesterday, that Jenner was pushing the anti-fascist stuff more. And one of the questions that the lawyers asked towards the end was, these are relatively small meetings that you're having to deciding about what you're going to campaign on and you're going to affiliate to. Would Mark Jenner, as an undercover police officer, be able to sway the decisions of the group? And the answer is clearly yes. I mean, Metcalf was quite, Mark Metcalf's not someone who's easily swayed, in his politics, but he said, of course he would. He's got a history of it. He's come in, he's clearly sort of, he claims to be a building worker, but as Mark Metcalf said, very clean building worker. Didn't some of us, when other people sort of have spoken, sometimes you can see the dirt under their fingernails while they're speaking. Jenner wasn't really like that. But Yeah, I'm not sure where I'm.
Yeah.
I'll talk myself into a dead end now.
No worries. I mean, we were saying about the trade union activity. I mean, on 2 occasions this morning, Mark Metcalf said that it should have been you. It should have been Dave Smith who was up there speaking about it, not him.
That's very kind of him.
Yeah.
Seeing as meeting won't allow me to speak, I've got a rule, an actual rule in that I'm not allowed to speak in the inquiry because I think the chair has said I have nothing of use to add to the inquiry. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that's quite something to be told, really, isn't it? Yeah. As well as the trade union activity and the anti-fascist work, we were taking through a lot of the family justice campaigns that the McLaren Roach Centre supported, the Brian Douglas campaign particularly, but also the Joy Gardner campaign. I mean, that was a very, I thought it was quite powerful. Mark Metcalf's clearly still very upset about what happened to Joy Gardner. I mean, it's a horrific story. Joe Gardner was killed as a result of a police immigration raid where they taped her head up with duct tape, like 13 foot of duct tape. I mean, it's just a horrific murder by the police. And we were taken to some of the media reports that came out afterwards that really show that the police had leaked details to the press to try and paint Joy Gardner as violent and abusive. And there was questions asked of Mark about what was she actually like, as he was someone who'd met her a number of times, and he said he didn't get that impression of her at all. He got very emotional.
Yeah, I thought he got very emotional. I mean, anyone who's met Mark is, he's very big, he's very brash, he's very outgoing, and you could, I mean, God, you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, the man was in tears. It's someone he clearly knew, someone who's clearly sort of thought was, I don't think he'd say a close friend, but someone he had
respected,
some, respect and had some sort of,
and liked.
Liked basically, and to see the way she died and then the way she was sort of, mistreated by the press afterwards, was appalling. One of the questions, of course, that keeps coming up with all of us, I think we all recognise that, they're going to ask us about violence 700 times in anyone's hearing. And they talked about violence, when the College Roach Centre did, memorials or, sort of events for, people who died in police custody, what was your attitude to violence? And I thought Mark was really good on this. He was literally saying, look, we're there with a grieving family. We're there to show, to show respect to and to mourn, one of their family members who's died in police custody. It's completely disrespectful to the family and the community, and completely counterproductive if what we're doing is causing violence. It's completely nonsense. And I thought that's a key point. We're basically there to assist and to help people. Yes, to expose wrongdoing by the police as well, but it's much more powerful to expose that by by keeping everybody on board and everybody focused on what the problem is, rather than having kicking off sometimes. And one of the things that I thought was Mark has actually got some great one-liners sometimes as well, of course. And one of the questions was, well, when you were in charge of the stewarding at this kind of events, if there were individuals who looked like they were going to provoke violence, would you go and tell them to calm it down in order to not provoke violence? And his response was, I'm not in charge of the Metropolitan Police. They were the people who were responsible for the violence on most of these occasions, not the community and not the grieving family.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was a very good line. I mean, he gave a lot of anecdotes actually about his involvement in stewarding, about de-escalating situations, about talking to youth that maybe would have been in a mood to kick off, and like getting to de-escalating those situations. I mean, he gave a lot of detail about a lot of things actually, but he certainly left. There was no shallow answers on these topics.
But also, sometimes even in the police reports, it says that Mark Metcalf was the person who's trying to de-escalate. Mark Metcalf was the person who's suggesting not confronting people and that kind of stuff. I mean, equally, Mark Metcalf was a very prominent anti-fascist at the time, and as he said, Combat 18, who are neo-Nazi sort of terror group, literally one of the few neo-Nazi terror groups has been banned by the British government. A lot of their leading lights are in prison for
Murder.
murder, basically. And he says their first ever magazine, his picture was on the front cover, and in the second edition of their magazine, they had his picture, they had his name, they had his home address.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting actually was that home address was the wrong home address, and because it was wrong, and the details of it were wrong, he could tell where it had come from, and it had come from the Metropolitan Police because they had got his address wrong at an earlier point, and that information then been passed on. So the Combat 18 magazine was being run by Charlie Sargent. Charlie Sargent, who people may remember, went on to murder one of the other leading lights within Combat 18, and turned out to be a police informer. He went straight to two of his police handlers who were in different departments within the police in the aftermath of the murder, in the hope that he could get away with it. If that failed, he's in prison today.
Yeah, and also a convicted drug runner. A gun runner. I think is not just a murderer. But it's actually. Was running guns as well. He did. All of the questions about violence are all about this fact of are you preemptive? Are you going in there in order to bash people up? Are you basically just a violent person? And I thought Mark was very good. He said, look, when if have I ever been involved in violence in anti-fascism? Of course I have, but it's always in self-defense. We turn up to have many, many more of them, and we take over the spot that they were going to be in. Through our sheer force of numbers, we stop them to be able to organise. We say they've got no platform by having more of us than there are of them. And sometimes you need to, it's very helpful to have some big, big people who can handle themselves when we're doing that. But he also said, look, if they've got my house number and my name and address, if a group of fascists come around my house at night, I ain't going to be punched first. I'll defend myself, but I'll throw the first punch if they're trying to get into my house, which is quite rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he made the stroke quite forcefully. It's something actually that Steve Headley said yesterday as well. The tactics of anti-fascism were very effective. Nick Griffin made an announcement that the BNP would stop having marches, rallies, and punch-ups because they simply could not dominate the streets like they wanted to anymore because anti-fascism had stopped them in their tracks.
Yeah. I mean, multiple anti-fascist groups point this out that up and down the country. I mean, these are all Metropolitan Police officers, so it's all very London centric at the moment. But I've spoke to comrades in Glasgow, in Newcastle, in Manchester, in Liverpool, in Bristol, who are all doing exactly the same stuff. Bringing people together. I'm sure in Wales, they're doing the exact same things, bringing people together to stop the fascists organising. We should. As you said, you're meant to be an anti-fascist. That's something you're taught in school to be an anti-Nazi.
And I think it's such it's one of those sort of lessons for today. That actually the left, when it does unite and works on these things, it can drive the fascists off the streets. I think there's no question in mind that lives were saved by halting the rise of the BNP in the 90s and stopping them from being on the streets. And we're seeing a situation now where the fascists have got a lot of confidence about being on the streets. We see the raising of the flags on all the bloody lampposts and all this kind of stuff, which is about them trying to show their control of territory. And we need that anti-fascist response again today.
I think completely that exactly. Look, my point on my take on this, and actually it's something that Mark Metcalf did say repeatedly, is we didn't just go out and have fights with people. We were doing political campaigning. A lot of it was giving out leaflets. A lot of it was speaking at public meetings. A lot of it was door knocking and trying to convince people. It was anti-fascism is multifaceted. Yes, there's a time and a place for demonstrations. Yes, there's a time and a place for lobbying. People. But equally, if fascists are going to come out and are going to terrorise a community, are going to smash up a union office, which is going on at the moment. There was literally just a couple of weeks ago a National Education Union event was attacked by fascists. Then if we know that's going to happen, then we need to be organised. Yes, we've got to do the political stuff, but we also need to take proactive steps to make sure that our movement, and I don't just mean the Labour movement, I just mean community groups and anyone on the progressive left, and that needs to organise to to defend ourselves, you know, and that those things don't happen spontaneously. It does need people to go out and do some organising, you know, and there is a long tradition of that in this country. You know, it's not something that is, you know, just a few people have sort of talking about. They talked about the, you know, today Mark mentioned the 43 group, you know, a group of Jewish ex-servicemen after the servicemen and women after the Second World War who came back in East London when Mosley had been interned during the Second World War, and immediately after the Second World War, the British Union of Fascists once again started, trying to hold meetings in Jewish areas of East London, and all of these, you know, people from the local Jewish community who'd all been in the military for 5 years. We'll sod that for a game of soldiers. We'll make sure you're not organising, and we're not organising meetings and marches through our community. And you know, the Asian community and the black community and the trade union community and the left have done that, you know, ever since. And I think it's a proud tradition that, you know, none of us should be apologising for it or ashamed of it. I think we need to learn the lessons of doing it again. Once again, not because we're all bloody mad fighters, as Mark Metcalf said. He goes to football every single Saturday. If he wanted to be, if he was just obsessed with violence, he could have been a football hooligan. You know, he's never been involved in anything like that.
No, I mean, I think that was a really good point. I mean, it just showed the kind of ridiculousness of the idea that somehow people getting involved in political activity in order to cause mayhem. It's like there's a really, particularly back then, there's a really easy forum to get involved with mayhem if you wanted to.
Yeah, anti-fascist people involved in anti-fascism, and all of the people who've been interviewed in this, you know, giving evidence in this tranche around this issue. Their involvement in anti-fascism isn't because we like to fight it. It's a philosophical belief system. You know, we philosophically we believe that, you know, if fascism never takes power, that's an existential threat to democracy and to the labour movement and to our lives as well. You know?
Yeah, 100%. Mark's is back again this afternoon with more questions. I don't feel we've got very far in terms of the questioning.
I think you might be running over.
Yeah, I think it's going to be late. Yeah, it's going to be a late one, I would imagine. We've seen some other reports from Trevor Morris, from I forget the other Neil Richardson, cover name Neil Richardson, undercover reports about Mark Metcalf before Jenna was deployed, and then we just started to see the beginning of the Jenna reports about him. We're still in 95 with that. Obviously, Jenna was deployed for 5 years, so we've got a lot of reports to get through over the afternoon. But worth tuning in for. Anything you'd like to add?
Well, only that, of course, Alison is sitting in the public gallery as well, watching. Who gave evidence earlier on in the week, and you know, about very, very often the same kind of stuff that's being discussed now. And yes, because we're getting onto more of the reports, I've seen some reports from Jenna where Mark Metcalf was there, and I was at the same events very often. So I'm definitely hoping that some of the stuff about the Brian Higgins defence campaign and his involvement in trade union activities, as I said, the JJ fast foods strike at I'm trying to remember where it is. It's Tottenham Hale, just around the corner from Tottenham Hale Tube Station was where the picket line was, and at Southwark. You know, I mean, a whole host of industrial disputes where he's there spying on them. So yeah, sneering. Some of the reports are quite sneering, actually. So so join us for that. You can follow on the live stream from the undercover policing inquiry. It'll be a different link to this morning's. Look out for that. I'll be reporting on Twitter throughout the day, the rest of the day. But there have been a few breaches this morning, which always mean that we lose a lot more than just the bit that's breached. But yeah, I'll try and keep you up to date if that happens again. You back this afternoon? I might not be.
Fair enough.
I've only got so many hours that I can spend on this. So.
Yeah. Tomorrow we'll be hearing from Dr. Graham Smith, who was also involved, along with Alison and Steve Headley, who heard from yesterday, was also involved in the Colin Roach Centre. Before we actually get onto Jenna giving evidence himself from Monday. You'll be here for that, though, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. Cheers for now. See you this afternoon.
See you later, kids.